The support to Uganda's response to gender equality surge, funded by the Department for International Development (DFID), aims at strengthening efforts towards achieving equal access for women and men to opportunities and a life free from violence and ultimately gender equality.
As a country, we've made some milestones in terms of having a favorable legal and policy framework, have quite a number of laws and policies in support of gender equality and women's empowerment. Alongside those laws and policies, you find that we've had areas where we really needed to do quite a lot.
SAGE has mainly 4 objectives. The first is building the national capacity for Government of Uganda, that is ministries, departments, agencies, in gender and equity budgeting. The second is work on prevention against gender-based violence, and this component focuses mainly on improving public awareness and progressive change in social norms in the communities where we work. The third component is on increasing access to psychosocial, safe shelters for survivors of gender-based violence. And just linked to that is the component of women economic empowerment.
To achieve this, the project supported Action Aid, Mifumi and Sedovip to improve public awareness and progressive change in social norms away from gender inequality and gender-based violence.
Sasa is the word that means now, and it has 4 phases. It has the start, it has the awareness, and then the support and action. The violence that we are experiencing, we don't have to wait for time. We need to start acting now. So that's why the word comes like that. So as we bring the word Sasa, and then we put in the issue that we are tackling. This is violence against women and FGM in the community. So FGM was so sensitive in the community, so we had to first use violence against women as our entry point, as a soft landing for the community to understand us, to trust us, so that we can start talking about this. So because the community was so secretive and trying like to avoid us, so as CS reached out to the community using the SASA card, talking about what violence is, the different forms of violence. After 4 months, we realized that the community has recognized violence as a problem. The community members recognize that there are very many forms of violence than the only form they were used, the physical. They recognize economic form of violence, sexual, emotional, and physical.
Ni dala chago nagai ham fila jindi chago nagala chijinda ko biga koroit. Chekeshinde na magago porio no kyo bagosto. Chago nagai bach. Ma mambo mishara majeli banombo. Kidanya kebata chale. Tiga fila jini bamuak lag mengala filings kagane. Do wa porchiala filings le kboriet le. Kongat chekin bala filings la kboria. Aborchiat la amborio ne nyola mi wogang man. Damu wogang man le. Amojila nyabatatya.
The project also increased access to safe spaces or shelters where legal, health, psychosocial services for gender-based violence survivors were offered.
The support that has been extended to the Government of Uganda on the establishment of the gender-based violence shelters. In these shelters, it has been made possible for women and girls that are victims of GBV to access, first of all, temporary shelter for a maximum of 2 weeks, and this period provides time for the woman or the girl to recover from the trauma. Alongside the temporary shelter has been the linkages in terms of referral with the critical service providers, depending on the case in point.
We offer basic services. Some of the support services that we offer are psychosocial, that is counseling. We offer pro bono services, that's going to court. whereby as Action Aid, we foot all the bills. We also give admissions. This is where we bring in survivors who are in dire situations and need a hand or help. We admit them to the shelter. We have a dormitory where they are given the necessary support as we look for a way to put them back into a community which we consider a safe space. Then we also boost some people with some economic empowerment, what we call a resettlement package.
The story of the shelter actually started way back in 2013. We, as a planning unit, had collected data, and we are collecting data on gender-based violence. We analyzed the data, and we realized that indeed there was a challenge, a gender-based violence challenge. Now, from the data, we saw that about 96% of the cases suffering from the gender-based violence were women, and 4% were men. We saw that the shelter here was receiving about 500 cases annually. And those 500 cases are cases that are from all over the region.
However, there are instances of people who need to be accommodated, like probably you've seen. What we've been currently having is a 2-roomed shelter, and we have not been able to have the ability to accommodate them. But recently we have been fortunate, we are grateful. DFID provided money, 200 million, to build a shelter, and this was to build onto the efforts that Kwen District Local Government had undertaken, because the local government of Kwen had allocated 40 million shillings and they had started constructing a shelter. But given the fact that this was a 20 million shilling annual contribution, it would have taken about 15 years roughly. But with the support of DFID, we now have a shelter. It is up and about. It is about to be launched.
There is need for an immediate emergency funding for that transition, to ensure that for the existing shelters, they do not close like some 2 or 3 that have been closed because of funding.
Amongst the key issues that the project sought to tackle is the commercial sex exploitation of children. The targets were people who exploit children through commercial sex work.
We had to address commercial sexual exploitation of children, which was, I would call it a gray area, because the ones who had been working on it were responding to the cases. Now our task was to work to prevent, because those are 2 things. Rehabilitating the victims was what was happening with many other entities. Now our role was to work with the communities to prevent sex encounter. Of course, adapting lessons from SASA. Same with FGM. And FGM is a social norm that needs intensive engagement, because it's about their tradition, their belief, and their identity and value system. So we are supposed to use SASA to help change that.
Nze Beyin Nile, I was a pimp. I was getting some money. I didn't joining a Treasure Life Center. Nalinga nkola omulimu nenga ngatako kubeera pimpo oba kayungirizi. Naye wakati nga nkola nalinga kunganya abaana abawala nga nina be mbaleetera. Basinga okwetanira abaana basomera abatandika. Ate bateekamu ssente nnyingi. Bakasobera nga oli-exposed ku bo ne bali abaana. Twabeeranga nga buli baasi oteekwa okubayo ate oteekubamu ne ssente eziwera. N'okunganya abaana b'otamanyi nga 8 obawo ennamba yo buli muntu n'omugulira n'anywa. Musaza bagamba mana this guy atuwadde saawa nga 8, 9, 10 zibukwajika baasi ez'ennabugabo zaabanga zigwa wakati w'essaawa emu n'emu ekitundu ezo ez'amasomero. Kati ng'obeeramu paka saawa 10 nga buli omu omugulidde omwenge, omugulidde ebyokunywa biki, naye nga baba bakedde ennamba oba oli awo nkyabakubira. Naye kati it's like nakkiriza loosi zibeewo nange kennyini ntandike afresh.
SAGE has also enhanced the knowledge and skills of women to initiate and manage economic enterprises through the Women Economic Empowerment Initiative.
This project was brought in to ensure that women are involved in economic opportunities, and there it would help reduce on the dependence syndrome, and it will also increase in their participation in their families when they have income generating activities.
Rubut nyejemi tajek le chibonde bigo 17 na bigo 17 le bigo mnana le bigo je survivors bigo angman le bigo je widows bigo en le disabled bigo somok le kilego kiba sukulu ngosu jago kwaga kilego am gruput le kijajajak savings lago jaja savings le cheje mi de saving ni chanyor te action aid aran kem de saving ni yo go je saving ni ku kalle action aid ko ne ngomnenet oneteji le jerip toy garigi lo je mung doyam ga lo chit yo biashareti aga je kwandinde kibundo saget ni ki kolle ko ne priasi na ke kibundo ko ni anik 60 ya go je nyoro priasi na ni anik 60 le che ushe am sawet nyok ba season nyok ba market nyok ba latu ari ke gi je nyor la je nyor karik million manana ago mian somogi agana ke bonda saving ina kya jeki million ina somogi agana mtan ke savings chong choni.
I'm sure there should be sustainability, and then we have the commercial officer who can mobilize them in through circles. Yes, because now if a group was given money, what we now look at is how is every individual in that group benefiting from the big group.
As the project comes to an end this year, many beneficiaries of the various aspects that the SAGE project supported can attest to having their lives changed tremendously.
This project kinyol kapsa kimami ngale kita jangit am sang dinyi mabor yen bawa chairman nyamba ne babo ndamba ishiet kimel mamba go baji ngal ka dami to ti no ne jogo mi dale mu je pindo tege magat ni tinya ja tale o won sit de bo won sit le aga sana magita ke nye ginyol le jana mon sit la kimami kimamba ji nyeta ngalolo tenga ko tami to ti no ne ngale kima chingo to tia bi ko am nyawa jang mo ji bi kala mi aro twet le kimana jingat la mi aro twet amane ci bor ci abi ka danjas ci bef ci dog wa ci bor ci ya danjas ci bef fiem la jam da bi ko ci bor ci mbale ka to ko tok le ka ci amut ci do yo ko ci amut ci da la mu jawe ni yo ko pinda sa ni bar ku yimba ci da le ko la jëm jang woni aje bi jut pi kala you just push the baby ki ci mama tan ñone ko dar do do mama tan ñole ki ci tane kum ñaan an ko singan bor wona kala kege la gas kap sale su dung bor wona ke woy kap sa kama amba bor wona ki jamu dung bak wona bor won ki la istula.
As the Nebi Women Protection Center, we have left a milestone in this area. It is what we would call a one-stop center to get support. Many of the survivors or many of the women in this area are victims of gender-based violence. And unfortunately, the patriarchal system that they have, or the culture that is embedded in their community, has left them without a voice to get aid. Now most of them come to this shelter where we give them that support. We've been able to give so many psychological support. We've been able to give so many legal support. As we speak now, we still have cases that are still pending. We are also proud of so many cases that we have been able to work on and win in favor of these women. Then we have sensitized these people. Sensitization is key. Empowerment is a goal and win-win for us. When these women know, or these people know what their rights are, when they know how to fight for themselves, it goes a long way in helping them.
So ajak ngitjoni le ki kwek tarit nye jemi je gasene chekle jemi de chiegi daga nyeta bon. Ajak ngitjoni nam grupu nya ajak le ki chigu smart. Ulaga se cheka kwegi la ki chigu nyot lile we are smart women. Am grupu nya ajak. So ki ka speak alak le mi kuye je so ji daga nyeta bon. So am Action Aid kikwer nene chele lo kapsa. Kikwer nene ngunyi legi maji muji ke ko kukwerwech paka itiu. Kinyi chiku ngarakyodin garomen ago Action Aid. Am nyishen nye kikwi. So kajemda je che somala if Action Aid kugalek takitasaget ay. Ang supporting gan some groups like 15 to other groups in our sub-county. Chemde je gasale the sub-county will grow up. Ang kwege helese sub-county. Ang kwege sub-county nyega kwege supplying gan amik to other areas. Like supplying gan briasi nagi am jongundo.
This program enables us, Action Aid, and the different stakeholders, the communities, our partners, to be able to bring hope to the survivors and victims of gender-based violence, that there is somebody who cares, that there is an opportunity for us to provide safety nets, to be able to provide a space, whether that includes a temporary space, which was in the shelters, or indeed to provide legal space or legal aid, psychosocial support, to enable the communities that are really facing gender-based violence to have recourse to action.
Local governments that we've worked with have provided, for example, infrastructure, but also buildings where to house the shelters. So even as the program is ending, I know that this can still continue. The district can still continue with the work that we've been doing, including prevention and response as well. And this can be done maybe not at a scale of the search program, but it can still be done.
Much as the project has achieved its aims of achieving equal access for women and men to opportunities and life free from violence and ultimately gender equality in the project areas, the challenge of gender-based violence and gender equality is still a big problem in Uganda, and this needs a much wider, comprehensive and sustainable approach over a long period of time.
We need an emergency funding, and this is possible. It happened with the corona, it can happen because this is serious. So that transition, and that transition is going to handle a process that in 1 year we should be having a new framework of operations that will be in these current districts, but also going forward in others.
As a district leader of Kumi, I have been presenting on a number of times to the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development the need for the line ministry to come in to support the interventions already set up by the SURGE program spearheaded by Action Aid. Because one, we need their support to these shelters. We need the staff to be permanent in the what? In the shelter. I will later on give you the way forward as a district. But now what Action Aid has done to us is tremendous. And that is why I always feel bad when I hear that a certain program by Action Aid is phasing out. I really feel bad.